Hello and welcome to Crucible of Worlds for more dedicated Legacy action. Today we have a special edition. We are playing in the Legacy Showcase Challenge today, which means that it's going to be more rounds than a league would be, and there's sort of higher stakes for what we can win. So the deck I've selected to play is the mono-white painted deck that I've been building for a while and sort of fine-tuning. I played it on my channel a bunch of times, going sort of 4-1 I think for 3 leagues. Might have had a 3-2 in there as well. But the deck's pretty solid and I'm a big fan of it. So, essentially, we are a combo deck. We have Painted Servant and Grindstone. These two cards together means that you can mill your opponent's entire library with a Grindstone activation, and thus win the game. But this is tucked into a pretty solid sort of shell of just good, solid magic cards, right? So we've got 4 Stoneforge Mystic. This is a win condition on its own that requires a lot of respect, and simply just wins a game a lot of the time if you untap with it. So we can get the Batterskull if we need life, or the Kaldra if we just need to aggro our opponent. Then we have stuff, the Storyteller. This is just an incredible draw engine. And for mono-white to be able to access a draw engine that draws more cards than a lot of blue decks even draw is really potent. Now, the Living Weapons, these will put counters on it. The other copies of stuff, the Storyteller, put counters on it. We have a Retrofitter Foundry to put counters on it. And we have Urza Saga. So that's plenty of ways of charging this up. And the more times you charge it, the more things you find to keep charging it. And you just go ahead and win. So we kind of got the long grindy game sorted with our deck. But we've got some other tools in here as well. We've got the Esper Sentinel to try and slow the game down so we can get to that more grindy position. So this will make our opponent pay an additional mana for their spells or give us extra cards, which can hopefully let us take the game over. We have Mother of Runes, so if we need to do a protected combo win with a Painted Servant, we can do that. Or just protect one of our creatures that is important. And we've got these Ethersworn Canonist to slow down combo decks, as well as hurting cantrip decks, because they can't cantrip into a play. They have to cantrip and then cast on their next turn. Now, obviously, they can cantrip on their turn and cast an instant on our turn. But this massively slows down a lot of blue decks, so it's quite potent, and is incredibly good against things like Storm and Elves, where they just can't keep spamming spells. Then we have the glue that holds this whole thing together, really, which is Oswald Fiddlebender. It lets us find the right pieces we need, and it means that if we have, like, an A but without a B, we can either go find the B or turn our A into something that just furthers the current plan we're on. So we can sacrifice Ancient Dens or Urza Saga tokens to go and get Grindstone or one of these utility spells, including our Singleton Portable Hole for removal, or we can go and sacrifice like a Retrofitter Foundry or whatever to go and get our Painted Servant so we can combo off. And we also have a Singleton Crucible of Worlds. This allows us to Wasteland lock our opponent, or Urza Saga lock our opponent by just constantly playing all these creatures to the board that are going to be very difficult for them to get through, as well as just a draw engine with Horizon Canopy as a Singleton. So we've got a pretty solid aggressive plan here. So the idea is that our opponent has to expend their resources on our Stoneforge Mystics and things like that, and stuff for Storytellers. And if they don't, they'd probably lose the game. But if they do, it means that they've got less resources to deal with our combo. So quite often, this deck ends up being an aggro deck that then pivots to a combo if your aggro plan is foiled. But sometimes, like especially in the combo matchups, you are just a combo deck yourself. So you can play your turn 1 Urza Saga, your turn 2 Painted Servant, and then kill them on 3 when your Grindstone comes off. Part of the reason I also really enjoy this deck is you have a lot of options, but we also have a whole bunch of planes. I think we've got 9 planes in the deck. So our mana base is very resilient to disruption, even though we are running the Urza Sagas in here, which is something your opponent's going to want to Wasteland a fair amount. There are some other mono-white painter builds out there as well, things like Dreadnought or the sort of classic Ingenious Smith build, the Eddie the Intern built, and those are all good. The reason I prefer this version is we have a smaller tutor box, right? But we have just intrinsically, individually more powerful cards. Because we're trying to play these A plus B combo type thing, I don't like having cards surrounding it that also require other things to be good. So what I sometimes find when I play decks that are sort of 2 big combos smashed together is you end up with loads and loads of draws that don't do anything because you need another piece to make this card playable. Whereas we just have a whole bunch of really strong playable cards in like stuff as Storyteller and Stoneforge Mystic that could just win games on their own and completely take the game over. So we've got all these good cards that we're burying our A plus B combo in, so we're sort of more reliable to play other games. We don't have to be all in on the combo. We just have really solid cards that demand answers. And we're not going to sort of draw too many tutory pieces. And one of the main reasons I actually went into playing this mode of the deck after I was originally on the Ingenious Smith build was because Meltdown was everywhere. And Meltdown is really bad for the builds with like 4 Ancient Dens and Mox Opals and Ether Vials and loads of stuff like that. So instead, I tried the Stoneforge Mystic and was very impressed with it, because this is a threat that you can go and find that dodges Meltdown and just kind of carries on cruising. And by not playing the Ingenious Smith, we also only have to run 3 Ancient Den. You could even trim this to 2, but I think 3 is probably fine. So hands where we get 2 of these against a Meltdown board are a lot less likely. So percentage-wise, we're increasing our odds there. And, you know, we can survive Meltdowns relatively well here. Like, Meltdown is probably going to catch 2 of our permanents, maybe 3. But some of these permanents are already going to have value from us. Things like stuff as Storyteller or Esper Sentinel drawing us cards or whatever. So, and, you know, we can draw a card off the Saga Lantern. So it feels like in the post-board games, I'd rather be in a deck where I have like solid cards that I can navigate around the big things that are haymakers against the deck. That's not to say the Ingenious Smith build isn't good. Like, Eddie's been doing really well with it, and it's an excellent build, and you should definitely check it out. He's got a primer as well on... I'll link it in the description, actually. He's written a really nice primer for the Ingenious Smith build of this deck. But for me, I like playing the Stoneforge Mystic and just having good cards that can win the game on their own. That's more my sort of jam, I think. As for the sideboard, I may have mentioned that our combo matchup isn't so great when I played this deck before. So there's decks that can come in underneath us because we're not a fast combo deck. We can clock on turn 3 at the earliest, which is relatively slow for Legacy standards. So we have a lot of tools to try and mitigate this. We have 3 Deafening Silence. This is a card that will really slow the Storm decks down. They basically can't win while this is in play. We have the Ethersworn Canonist as well in the main deck, so we've got 6 of this effect post-board, which is really strong. We have Containment Priest. We have 3 of these, weirdly all with different arts, but there we are. So this card is good against Elves because it stops Natural Order Greenstone Zenith. It's good against Reanimator because it stops Show and Tell from their sideboard, and it stops just the general reanimate spells, and it's obviously good against Show and Tell and Sneak Attack because they can't put creatures in while this is in play. Now, you may have noticed my graveyard hate is a little bit narrow. We've got the 1 Soul Guide Lantern and the 1 Grafdigger's Cage, and obviously the Containment Priest, but those are quite slow in terms of Reanimator. Now, the thing is, you can play Leylines in this deck, right? You can play Leylines in the sideboard, but they're a terrible draw, and if you don't have them in open hand, you've got nothing, whereas if your opponent like discards you turn 1, you can then still draw into one of these answers and be okay. So in decks that aren't black, I don't like playing Wasteland, Leyline very much. So that's why we're not playing the Leyline here. Also, this is a Legacy Showcase Challenge, which means there's probably going to be less of the field as Reanimator than you would find in a league, for example. So I'm expecting to play against less Reanimator, which means we need less of those tools. Whereas I imagine the Sneak and Show percentage is going to be slightly higher, which is where Containment Priest is much better. So this is just a more flexible card that is a little bit slower, but is going to hit more matchups, and it's going to hit more relevant matchups for this tournament, in my opinion. Then we have a single Lorana the Third Path. This is just another way of blowing some stuff up that has some great synergy with the 2 Karakas in our deck, so we can keep rebuying this and keep replaying it and sort of grind our pen out. We don't have like a big haymaker to blow up all the artifacts, but we don't need to because we have a combo finish. We just need to hit specific things to keep the game going long enough till we can combo them or until we can overpower them with the other stuff we're doing. So that's the idea of the Lorana Third Path. We have a single Grafdigger's Cage. It's something we can find with Oswald, or we can find it off of Urza Saga. So it's just more ways of interacting with the graveyard, but also does similar things to Containment Priest in terms of Greenstone Zenith and Natural Order. So this is going to be quite useful. And again, like I said, I'm expecting less Reanimator, so this is just going to be a more useful tool against Elves, which I expect to see in sort of higher numbers than you would do in a league. Then we have 3 March for the Worldly Light. This is our flexible sort of removal spell. We can hit Marit Lage with it, which is important. We can also do that instant speed, which is very important. But one of the big things that you get with this card is it says exile target artifact, creature, or enchantment, which means you can hit lands. So you can hit the Urza Saga from your opponent, which is really, really big news. So like Mono Red Painter is quite a popular deck now, and I think the white build is superior in that specific matchup. I think Red Painter's definitely got a lot of better matchups in terms of combo matchups than we have, but we have some really good fair grindy matchups too. But in the sort of red versus white Painter, having this card that can just blow up your opponent's Urza Saga or all their permanents is really nice, and it's not the cheapest of answers that you can play in the format, but a 1 mana sort of sinkhole is very strong when there are scary lands like Urza Saga about. But also, you can scale it up into hitting bigger things if you need to, whether that's going to be things like Pithing Needle or whatever. This is just a flexible answer, and because we don't have any big like destroy all things because it will catch some of our own things, this is probably the best we're going to get, and I've been very impressed with it in a lot of matchups. It's very good against decks that want to play to the board. Things like Storm decks where they play out all their 0 drops, you can then just smash them with the March of the Light. So yeah, that's the deck, and I can't remember how many rounds it is today. It's quite a few. I think it's 7 or 8 plus top 8. So it's going to be a long video today, but there's going to be lots of Magic to watch. So I hope you enjoy. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. This is a big video, so I'd quite like to get a lot of feedback on it and see if you like watching these larger tournaments. And check out the Patreon in the description below. All right, let's play some Legacy. All right, we're into round 1. Our opening hand is pretty good. We've got a couple of lands. We're on the draw. We can make a 1-drop into various 2-drops. This seems good to me. We'll keep. Let's see what our opponent's on. Seat of the Synod. So we're looking at some sort of 8 cast. Yeah, there we go. A bauble. They could be on the Painter version, or they could be on the Classic version. When we get some information here, now this tells the Sai is usually more often in the regular 8 cast. So that's something. All right. Let's go for a Plains into an Esper Sentinel. Right, we're getting a Force of Will on this. Pitching a Sai. Okay, double Sai especially makes me think our opponent is on the standard 8 cast of Chalices. Right, so they're going to get a bauble back for another redraw. Yep. So now we can work towards the combo with our Urza Saga plan. And that should outrace what our opponent's doing. But it can... Okay, this is a bit of a way of gumming up the works there. Okay. Interesting. Let's play our own Urza Saga. So we're going to have to get a creature to get bounced out of play. What is the most tempting creature to bounce out of play? It's probably the Stoneforge Mystic, I think. So this is bait to use up their Ether Spellbomb for a turn. If they just keep investing in this, then we can be in a slightly better spot. Our Urza Saga can get a Pithing Needle to stop this for the turn we go off. So yes to this, we'll go and get ourselves a Kaldra, because that can beat all of their creatures in combat aside from the Cannoneer. Alright. Now we don't want to expose our Painter before the Sagas tick down, because we don't want them getting a Pithing Needle naming Grindstone. Because that'll be difficult for us to beat, because we just have the one portable hole to get rid of it. Alright, I imagine they're bouncing our Stoneforge out of play here. A Sai. Okay, how many zeros have they got to load up with? There's one. Just the one. So they could have Force of Will blue card in hand. Okay, so they're going to use this to bounce our Germ token when the time comes. Right, so we play out this Ancient Den. We don't want to expose our Painter Servant, because then they will just get the Pithing Needle here. So it kind of makes things a little bit awkward for us. They don't have mana available right now. I think we are on Activate, put in our Kaldra, and then we'll play our Esper Sentinel here. We're just trying to work through this Ether Spellbomb, and then we can deploy our Painter Servant Grindstone combo and win in a couple of turns. So this should hopefully see the Spellbomb pop in the near future. The Kaldra is pretty good at getting through hordes of Thopter tokens. Hopefully we can draw some more land off of maybe some Esper Sentinel triggers if we attack our opponent that way. Alright, so they're popping their Saga now. What is it going to get them? I suspect it is... Oh, it's just a Mox Opal. That's interesting. So they reckon they've got this covered, which means we've managed to get through the Pithing Needle plan here. Are they going to pay around the Esper Sentinel or not? Don't use the... They'll probably use the Spellbomb in response to the Saga here, because we can go and get a Pithing Needle to stop the Spellbomb. Alright, making some more tokens. This is a turn where they could drop a Cannoneer into play, which would be a very fast clock for us to go up against, because right now our opponent's only got little bits and pieces. Alright, this is a pretty good one. It deploys a lot more threat, because this is effectively a 1 mana, 3 powers worth of flying. Quite strong. A Thought Monitor, yep, same deal again. They're getting deep into their deck here. Going to be a little bit tough, but we've certainly got a route to comboing our opponent out here. I need to play a no blue mana for the Spellbomb activation. That's interesting. That's very interesting to me. They're pecking for just 1. Okay. They got a land second main phase to... They do not. Interesting. How important is a bunch of mana to me right now? I think it's quite important here. So we have 3 mana here. We want to be deploying the Staff of Storyteller, I think, here. So we're going to get Pithing Needle and put it on either spell bomb. And then what are we deploying here? Is it the staff? So we can try and draw some more mana sources. I think so. Our opponent doesn't have mana to pay for an Esper Sentinel trigger right now, right? So we're going to get a draw here. This is what we're using it for anyway. Alright, we just saved ourselves some mana. This has gone incredibly well for us. I'll play this land. We'll go to attacks. Send in the big one. They can't chump block this entirely. They have to use multiple cards to do so. They've seen the Mother of Runes in our hand. We're not going to deploy that yet. We're going to deploy a Painted Servant because then we can use a... If we draw another land, we can just Grindstone our opponent out next turn. The one option we may think about here is if they draw a Chalice. So that incentivizes us to play Grindstone, Mother of Runes, just to dodge Chalice here. It's a little bit awkward, and it might cost us another turn. But our opponent isn't threatening lethal right now. They're going to have to start soaking up some damage soon. Got a couple of draws coming from these baubles. But yeah, I think we had to play this just in case of the Chalice, because that completely removes that direction of winning the game for us. Right, they've got a Seat of the Synod. Getting back a bauble. Again, them drawing cards is annoying, obviously, but it's not the end of the world. Now, they're accumulating a decent number of Thopter tokens here, but they're going to have to put several of them under the bus because this deals chunks of 5 with Trample, because it's got a lot of keywords. Having the Saga in hand now as well is going to be quite useful. Alright, so here's the Chalice that we mentioned is a thing that we wanted to play around, so that's good. Oh, they put it on 0. Okay, they're just doing this to make more Thopters. That's interesting. And they're putting the second one on 0, again, for more Thopters. So they're just trying to soak up the damage here. We can't win next turn because we don't have any fast mana available. It's not really what our deck tries to do. But we have 2 painters, so if they can force the first one, we can then deploy a second one. Alright, this is like a Cap Cannoneer. This is going to be their threat of choice. It's a pretty good threat. They're trying to just save up for one big win here, which might get it done. We'll see. How many things can they spam next turn really is what this is going to come down to. Alright, they're coming in with a lot. Okay. Coming in for a big hit. We might get punished for this play. We might not have enough time to deal with this Cap Cannoneer. Staff of Storyteller will save us some damage here. We get our Urza Saga into play. Let's cast our Painted Servant. And white, make them think about things like Solitude. We are 1 mana shy of comboing this turn. We can deploy a Staff of the Storyteller to block some damage. Is that going to be enough? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So they have just got lethal in multiple ways. I think we have to attack with the Germ token and see if we can get any joy from here, get some chumps. Alright, the Psy, that's not really an exciting one for us to clear off the board, because that's not the one that's attacking anyway. Okay, our opponent has won this game, I think. We played around the Chalice. They did have a Chalice, and I think maybe if we didn't play the Grindstone, they would have put it on 1 anyway, so we were kind of in a bit of a bind there. Our opponent has drawn half their deck, so it was a bit of a big ask for us. Alright, let's see what we can do here. Sure. So they're just playing some stuff in just to give the Cap Cannoneer... they don't have the Psy anymore, actually, so they didn't really get anything from doing that. The Cap Cannoneer needs the artifacts to come into play. Alright, this is another artifact that doesn't actually come into play. Maybe they just hurt themselves. They're in Chalice for 0 here. They need to put an artifact into play. They can just redeploy this Chalice of the Void, but cast it on where X is 1 here. And that will give their Cap Cannoneer unblockable. They do have enough in the air here, right? So this is 9, 10, 11. So they should be fine here. So we can just let them spin their wheels, show us more cards of their deck. I'm pretty sure I could tell you their deck list to within like 3 or 4 cards, their entire 75 at this point. Alright, they've got a Shadow Spear. Are they going to make the correct attack here? They are. Right. That'll do. We can't block the Cap Cannoneer, and there's too many other little guys. Yeah, a bit awkward. So there was a possibility that we could have played the Painted Servant and then had enough mana to Grindstone combo them the turn after. But the issue with that is, like I said, with the Chalice, which they did have in hand. So I don't have a problem with the way we played that one. So we have got these. I quite like Deafening Silence in this one. Ethersworn Canonist, very bad. So what Deafening Silence does, it means that any of their baubles basically just don't do anything. I like being able to wasteland my opponent out of this game, because it can sometimes come down to recurring permanents. Portable Hole is good, Pithing Needle is good. Got to find 4 cuts to fit these things in. I don't think Mother of Runes is that important here, because they're not really targeting many of our creatures. The Grafdigger's Cage is something we can use to shut off an Emery, but again, that's another slot that I'd rather not put resources into. I think we're going to board out a Grindstone, because our opponent's probably going to have Chalice for 1, and we're more likely to get it off of our Saga than we are to cast it. So we can trim one of these, because we've got loads of ways of finding the Grindstone. It's the easiest card to find in the entire deck, because we've got 4 Oswald, 4 Saga, and the Grindstones themselves. So I think this will do. There is an option to bring in the Plows to deal with the Emery. Maybe that's... I like having the Portable Hole as a thing we can fetch with a Fiddlebender. I think we'll submit like this. Because there is the issue of boarding in too many cards, and then your deck doesn't quite function as intended. I don't think we can keep this one. We need a bit more mana to work with. Okay, we have a turn 3 combo potentially. It's not ideal, but we'll give it a go. They're not going to be a deck that disrupts our mana base, so we can just play these Urza Sagas out. And if we draw another land, we can go turn 2 Painter, turn 3 get the Grindstone, activate, kill them. That's a plan that we can accomplish. Is it risky? Oh, very much so. But alright. Those things aren't the scariest yet, but they will become scary soon. Alright. So our Urza Saga's ticking up. Let's lean into the plan. They got a Forcible for this? No. Okay, we'll name white. So we're representing a kill next turn. Our opponent did not counterspell this, which is interesting. Because the mana we're getting off the Saga is going to have to be floated, it means we have to go for it in our main phase if we want to try and grind them. Right, a Bauble. Yep, our opponent is definitely looking for something. So they've probably got 2 Ottawaras and some number of... Okay, here's one of the things that can answer what we're trying to accomplish. They're just firing off straight away. Okay. And there's the Bauble. So we're going to shut off the Emery with this now. That's a pretty reasonable strategy. Draw a card here. We'll float a mana. We'll go get Pithing Needle, put it on Emery. Play a replacement Saga. So we have 3 mana to play with here, if we want it. We could start the Storyteller and start grinding some value there. Or we could get rid of one of their lands. We don't know if they have more lands available though, so I probably need to keep this for other uses. The mana efficient play is the Staff of the Storyteller, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the better play. I think if we get an Oswald online, that's going to be quite handy. So I'm going to deploy the Oswald this turn. So this is going to give us a lot of flexibility with how we can play following turns. Alright, our opponent's turn. So this can deal with an opponent's Urza Saga, which I'd rather... Oh, look at that. I'd rather blow up their Saga than their Seat of the Synod. A Thought Cast, sure. So for the most part, 8-cast decks have 3 fundamental ways of winning. Big Urza Saga tokens, a Kappa Cannoneer, or like little beats from the Psy and Thought Monitor Thopters. Although Thought Monitor is a construct, not Thopter, so in case creature type is relevant for you. But yeah, so those are basically the ways that the 8-cast deck wins. Alright, looks like we might be untapping with our Fiddlebender. So we're getting counter on our Saga. We did not find the land here, which is genuinely quite annoying. I think we will attempt to get rid of this as a Saga. They got 6 cards in hand. Okay, that just straight up worked. Okay, we get ourselves Soul Lantern, and we will be exiling probably the Kappa Cannoneer. Is either the Kappa Cannoneer or the Thought Monitor, in case they get to take away our Emery. Or maybe it's the Spell Bomb, just to make sure they don't have that interaction available. Again, they'd have to get rid of the Pithing Needle for this. Not hitting that land there is a real awkward moment for us. We will attack here. Alright, we can trade 2 damage for 1 damage, and that's a fine trade. Alright, we'll take our little damage there. They must have some other stuff in hand to do. We're going to see a Psy here. Yeah, okay. Can spam a bunch of zeros they've kept in their hand. Sure. There's a Thopter and a Mox. And a Shadow Spear. Yep. This basically is going to blunt a lot of our aggro plan. But we're not really in the aggro plan right now. Okay, so we can't make a construct with this, so we are just going to float. And we're going to get ourselves the Grindstone for future. Let's invest in that future. So I think we will deploy this Painter's Servant here in white. Then we can sacrifice our Soul Guide Lantern if we want to. Do we think our opponent's boarded in something like an Emrakul? That seems really weird. I think we can cycle this into a Staff the Storyteller and give us another plan, which also cycles into a Crucible of Worlds next time around. So let's go and find ourselves a Staff the Storyteller here. We could always get another painter, but Hurkyl's Recall is one of the things I'm expecting from our opponent, and it won't matter how many painters we have in that case. But we've got a little blocker if we need it. We've got a card advantage engine because we're going to have to hit the other mana. So what we can do next turn is draw with Staff the Storyteller, turn it into a Crucible, replay our Urza Saga. Bit of a grind. Our opponent obviously gets a lot of cards a turn with all their baubles and things that cantrip through. Alright, Snow-Covered Island, not a Saga, that's good to see. What are they going to get with us? Oh, they're just sacrificing stuff now. Interesting. Feels like they're panicking a little bit over there when you start sacrificing stuff with Sai. Alright, Lotus Petal. Sacrificing again. Oh, yeah. This is looking alright. They're just trying to find ways of interacting with our combo here. If we have a land, we can go for it next turn. Alright. Interesting. They need to find a Dismember here. So they basically just spend their whole turn drawing stuff and sacking stuff. If we don't hit the land, we can secure it next turn. Okay. Do we play around what could quite obviously be a Dismember? I don't think we do. I think we can draw from Staff and deploy a second painter to dodge Dismember. Because it's kind of our whole turn to go for it if we just jam stuff. Ooh, this is kind of nice. I will turn the Staff into a Crucible though. Get back an Urza Saga. Pretty powerful. We don't get to do anything with the rest of our mana here, but we're okay. Right, we might have just been able to win the game there. But our opponents saw a lot of cards, and they were holding up the Lotus Petal. And because they're not putting a lot of threat on us right now, I think we've definitely got time to draw another card and take another turn. Chalice of the Void. This is an X equals 0 one because they're planning on sacrificing it with the Sai. Right, they've got a Saga that we're going to blow up with March by the Body Light if we need to, or we can Wasteland them. We have options here. If our opponent leaves one mana open that isn't... I suppose we can hit the Lotus Petal with our March by the Body Light if that's the only mana they leave up. And then we can jam. Right. It's going to be another 0 Chalice of the Void that they can then sacrifice. So they're very much on the sacrificing their things train, which is a good place for us to be. Thought Monitor. Okay, so it's just the one Lotus Petal being left up by the looks of it, which is good news for us. Let's pop their graveyard out, because if we're about to mill them, I'd like to see as many cards as I can from their deck. If they have boarded in an Emrakul, and we've got rid of our Soul Guide Lantern, we're in a lot of trouble here. Alright, they're sacrificing that one. Interesting. Okay. So, as long as they don't play an island here. Alright, they're just scooping up. Okay, maybe they didn't have the Dismember. Alright, so we got a third game to go. Do I want to change anything here? Honestly, I don't think so. I think we are A-okay with what's going on here. And we're just going to submit like this. And see if we can get our opponent. I sort of showed the inevitability side of our deck. That we can grind quite well. I do like the Deafening Silence here. I prefer this on the play to the draw, but we will still keep this. So we can silence into Staff into Saga activations. And that's quite strong. We've got their Saga covered, so that's one of their major threats we can already say no to. We're going to get Emreed here, or they're going to have a turn 1 Kappa. Thoughtcast, sure. See, if we were on the play with this hand, then I think we basically just win the game. That's how powerful that Deafening Silence would be. Our opponent's got 4 cards, they're about to draw a 5th. Play out basic planes. Cast ourselves a Deafening Silence. Alright, so they can't do multiple permanents in a turn. This should really put the brakes on what they're doing. So like a Lotus Petal, for example, will be their turn. Right, Ancient Tomb. They're going to play a Sai, and then they can play 1 spell. Because this is a creature spell, so it doesn't count for their Deafening Silence. They not have a 0-drop to follow up with. Interesting. I don't really want to try and kill this just yet. I think we're just going to jam this Saga. Get this Staff the Storyteller going. And then we can start making construct tokens, which give us cards, which should give us multiple options to win the game. And if our opponent is unable to play multiple spells a turn, they're not going to be able to have giant constructs. And if they do get an Urza Saga, we can blow it up with our Much Father Light anyway. So I like the spot we're in. They could Otawara our Deafening Silence for a big turn as well, if they want to. Okay, we're looking for a Cap Cannoneer here. That's a pretty good one. So we're going to beat the Ward 4 on this one. Alright. Could be a little bit tough. We need 5 mana to really deal with this one. Painted Servant. I guess our plan has changed. So our opponent's got 3 cards in hand. I think we jam Painted Servant here. Name white. Hold up March of Otherworldly Light in case we need it for anything. We can untap and combo them out. There's their Saga. A little bit too late to matter that much. They haven't played an artifact yet. So I will take our free block on their big guy and save some life. We could probably block here. The size, but we're not going to make any difference, but you don't know what sort of weird stuff your opponents can have these days. Alright, we will float one from this. Get ourselves the Grindstone. Play ourselves a land. And do we need to Grindstone them now? I could have an Otawara here, which would be very irritating. But they don't really need to commit anything to the board because they're already ahead, so I think we just use our mana now. Otawara or Dismember? It's the Otawara. Sure. So we can either draw a card or March Otherworldly Light next turn. And we need to do this in the upkeep, don't we? Just in case they have Force of Negation. Say no to this Urza Saga before it gets up to the second stage. And then we'll pass. Sure. So they played an artifact. They pumped their guy. They're going to cast a spell as well. We can put Chalice for 2 here. It would be very strong if they have it. Oh, they're just drawing a card. That's good news for us. That probably means they don't have an answer right now. Thought Monitor, that's a pretty good way of drawing answers. Pumps their guy as well. So how much are we going to take here? 8, 9, 10. And then we're dead on the next turn. Yuck. This is going to be hard to best, I think. I think we're just going to be 1 turn off. This is also a creature spell, so it gets around the Deafening Silence quite nicely. If we were on the play with our hand, we would have won this game by now. Unfortunately, we're not. I think this whole round is going to be lost due to the die roll. So we can jam this guy and hope they can't make an artifact. I think we want to draw a card first in case you can find a land. Found a land. Let's jam our little friend here. We'll name white, which makes our March of Otherworldly Light a little bit better. But we didn't have the mana to pay the ward. We can't pitch cards to pay for the ward because this is a separate trigger. So we're 1 mana off doing that. 8. So we have to chump block the Cap Cannoneer. Maybe we weren't supposed to play the Painter. Maybe we're supposed to play the Retrofitters and make a chump blocker. Alright. To play an artifact, we lose the game. Their deck is mostly artifacts. Alright, that's the game. So, game 1 of this, we would have won if we'd have been on the play. And game 3, we also would have won if we'd have been on the play. So, I think we just got a bit unfortunate with the die roll there. This matchup isn't always the easiest because they can spam a lot of stuff. And they can sort of bog down your aggro plan quite effectively. But they don't have the most amount of interaction with your combo. But yeah, we've just sort of very thin margins on that one. We're sadly 0-1, but we got many rounds to go. So I'll catch you in the next round. Alright, for round 2, I want to buy. Not the most exciting for content, but there we are. We're 1-1 now. I'll catch you in round 3. Right, we're into round 3 now, and we're on the play. We've got a reasonable hand here. We don't have any basic lands, which is something I would quite enjoy here, but we've got 9 of them in our deck and a bunch more lands to draw. This seems like a relatively straightforward Sentinel, Stoneforge Mystic, and then Wasteland our opponent to Oblivion. We will keep. Right, our opponent has come back. They were obviously away somewhere. Knocked a few minutes off their clock, but let's get the game underway. We'll begin with an Esper Sentinel. If we do get our Karakas Wasteland... Oh, a Forcible Pitching a Daze. Pretty good for a 1-drop. Island Ponder, sure. Interesting that they're essentially valuing our cards more. Alright. Play our Wasteland. We've already seen Daze from our opponent. So I'm more inclined to play this Oswald Fiddlebender out. Because I don't mind if this gets Daze as much as I do the Stoneforge Mystic. Because Stoneforge Mystic is a 1-card win condition. Oswald kind of can be that, but it takes a bit longer. Also, if this gets up and running, it makes life a lot more flexible for how we can progress. Like if we need a removal spell, we can go and get one with a 0-drop. Yep, so there's the days that we thought might happen. Our opponent's now down to no lands in play. But they do have a basic island in hand, and they've already seen the Wasteland, so they're going to be reluctant to play a non-basic here. A Preordain. This is usually a combo-centric card. So our opponent could be on some sort of show and tell deck. They put 2 cards on the bottom from this. Okay, so we'll jam out this Wasteland first, and then we'll do our Stoneforge. Go and get our Kaldra. It's the quickest way to do this. So Force of Will, Ponder, Daze, Preordain. We could just do a speculative Pithing Needle on Sneak Attack. But our opponent could be on Doomsday as well. I think we're just supposed to play the Retrofitter Foundry here. And then next turn, we can hopefully get a little bit more information about what our opponent's doing and decide if we want a Pithing Needle. A Brainstorm, sure. And after that, we're probably going to be trying to hold up Karakas. We'd quite like to draw some more land, to be honest. Misty Rainforest, okay. What flavour of blue Preordained deck are we looking at? Another island. Interesting. Let's put in our Kaldra Compleat. Let's go to attacks. Bash for 5. So we have a choice here. We can hold up this Wasteland, or we can play this Pithing Needle. Now, if we're playing Pithing Needle onto, so our opponent has played just basic islands so far, which could be in Sneak and Show, or it could be an Omnitel list, in which case this Pithing Needle isn't really going to help very much. I think we're just supposed to hold up the Wasteland. It's not going to be something that's going to do anything in a lot of ways this turn cycle, because our opponent can play the land and then get the mana from it immediately, so they don't need to play it until it's relevant. Alright, Scalding Tarn. Okay. Does that change my predictions of what my opponent is doing? I think I might put this on Sneak Attack this turn cycle. Attack. So we'll play this, holding up the Karakas here. They're probably going to crack this Scalding Tarn in response. I don't know if that was the thing they wanted to do anyway. Another island. Surely it's not Sneak Attack with 3 islands. It was a Thought Lash combo deck. We've still got time. This is tough. I think it's probably going to be something like Grizzlebrand, maybe. If they're Omnitel, then sure they get us. But let's try the Grizzlebrand here. Because that's one of the things that we can't bounce out of play before it gets an effect. We have lethal on board, so we just need to survive this turn. Preordain. I just don't know what our opponent's doing, which is never a good place to be. Especially... Alright, so we're going into a sideboarded game and we don't know what our opponent is playing. We know it's got Dazes and we know it's got Preordains. Preordain is a card you generally see in combo decks. We didn't see a Ponder, which does make me think maybe they're more towards the like Thought Lashy type decks, like the Lash Gordon builds. Okay, so this Crucible doesn't seem like it's where we want to be. So if they are some sort of Omnitel build, I think having these Containment Priest is probably going to be useful. Other than that, I really don't know. Like, Deafening Silence definitely has some action, but it's not incredible. Probably trim a couple of Mothers. Our opponent's only shown us blue spells so far. I think we just have to sideboard quite light here and then see what happens. Do we want this Grafdigger's Cage? That can bail us out of various problems. Or do you want like a Miser's March by the Worldly Light? So we just, I suppose we could have a Lorana the Third Path here, because at least that beats down. Try something like this. They haven't played any permanents, so maybe we'll have this March by the Worldly Light instead. Yeah, I'm not really sure what our opponent's doing. They haven't seen our combo either, though, so there is that. Although Oswald is a little bit of a giveaway. We could try some sort of Deafening Silence type shenanigans. I think there's a lot of islands over there. Maybe it's some sort of Storm deck? Like High Tide? All those cards would be possible for High Tide. Didn't see anything that made me want the Pithing Needle or the Soul Guide Lantern. Maybe we'll try some of these just in case. Alright. We've got a lot of tools of varying kinds. Okay, we've got a plan here, right? Deafening Silence into Stoneforge Mystic is pretty strong. We do have this Kaldra, so we can get the Batterskull with the Stoneforge. You see a basic island, a Lotus Petal. Alright, they did force the Esper Sentinel last time. Do I think Esper Sentinel is better or worse than a Deafening Silence here? If our opponent is just trying to show and tell us, they can just do that next turn. And we don't have a great deal of options. I think I'm just going to jam this Deafening Silence. I'm not sure if it's going to be the one we want, but it's something. Alright, so our opponent's turn. If they have a show and tell, they can probably cast it this turn. Let's see if we can get any idea what our opponent's doing. Vesuvian Drifter. Okay. Are they going to luck into Grizzlebrand here? No. Okay. So, we have some options here. But things are going to get out of hand quite quickly. I think we will play this Esper Sentinel and play this Karakas. Our opponent can't turn this into a legendary creature this turn because we can bounce it in their combat step. There's a Misty Rainforest. Are they going to pay with the Ponder or not? They are. Okay. So they can put, if one of the top 3 cards of their library is a scary monster, they can do that now. If it's a non-legendary monster like an Archon of Cruelty, then we're kind of out of luck here. And that's unfortunately the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. We have this Kaldra Compleat in case they did do a show and tell, because we could just put that in. And that can race some threats, like Grizzlebrand and a Traxxas. It can kind of do a reasonable job. Maybe not so much Traxxas, but it's alright. They chose not to shuffle, which probably means this Vesuvian Drifter is going to be turning into a thing. No, interesting. They can still bash for 2 in the sky, though. Okay, so we can play out our... There's a Saga here. We can then deploy our Stoneforge Mystic. This is the quickest way to win the game that we have right now. Just going to get ourselves a Batterskull. This will show them that we probably have the Kaldra in hand. Go to attacks. Get our singular point of damage in. Is this going to turn into anything now? I suspect it won't. Okay, they're cracking now in case it does turn into a thing. Interesting why you wouldn't do that in your combat step, just in case you find something really good. Right, so attack with Esper Sentinel. We'll leave up this Karakas. The Deafening Silence plus Esper Sentinel is a bit of a weird nombo because our opponent is only going to play 1 spell, so they're going to be quite keen to commit the mana to the Sentinel. But a Pyroclasm. Sure, it's annoying, but it's something we can deal with here. We'll lose some guys, but we have an Urza Saga that we can churn out some tokens with. They're not going to be enormous to begin with, but let's see if this turns into anything scary. Archon of Cruelty. That's not one we get to do anything with, unfortunately. We'll get rid of this Batterskull. Okay. We have more of an idea of what our opponent's doing, at least. This can turn into a guy on blocks if that's the thing they want. This pumps up one. We're going to take our opponent off of red here. Should make sneak attack lines more difficult. We can hold up Saga, or we can Karakas if we need to. So we've kind of got 2 options there. They can turn this into a Archon of Cruelty right now. Oh, it's a Grizzlebrand. Okay. I will bounce this now then. So yeah, so the Archon of Cruelty, they drew that when they attacked, which is why it was a different card on top of their library. Alright, so they have a red source. What are we looking at here? A Blood Moon. Somewhat annoying, given that we don't have any of our many basics. We're actually pretty good against Blood Moon as a deck. You wouldn't believe it looking at our hand right now, but we are. Okay, so feels like if we don't draw a planes in the next turn or 2, we'd probably lose, but I would like to see what our opponent's deck can do and what's in there. This is the only spell they get to play this turn, so they're going to have to bin a load of those cards they just gained off of the Grizzlebrand, but their deck is inherently powerful so that their A plus B is going to be good enough most of the time. Alright, can we find a basic planes? We cannot find a basic planes, so we'll play out a mountain and pass. We're now just trying to get information about our opponent's deck, and we've probably lost this one because they got full grip. So we've seen the sneak attack here, so that's good. We know they're going to have Emrakul in their deck. What's this going to turn into? Nothing. Staff of Storyteller, that doesn't do anything for us. Let's pass the turn. We're just trying to see a little bit more. We've got time on our side here, so we just want to get the most out of the information that our opponent could provide. I haven't seen a show and tell yet, but I have to imagine there are show and tells in this deck. So this is the only spell our opponent gets to cast this turn, but if they can put something like an Emrakul or an Archon of Cruelty on top of their library, then they're going to be pretty close to finishing this off. Alright, in comes a Drifter, just for 2. Okay, there's another Drifter. There's a basic planes, okay. Is there a route that we can get to victory here in a few turns? So this is 2, 4. I think we're probably just playing Staff of the Storyteller. That does tie up our white mana in a big way, though. I think we'll play out this Oswald Fiddlebender because at least we have an artifact already, so we can cycle this into something more useful. Chance of our opponent having some kind of counterspell, very high. Yeah, there we go. Alright. We've seen a reasonable amount of cards from our opponent here. Let's send it over to them and see if they can finish us this turn. What are they going to turn into? Nothing. Okay, they're just going to bash us for 4 this turn and 4 the next turn, so probably playing the staff. Although we don't necessarily need to show our opponent the staff. A staff can buy us 1 draw step, but can we win this game with 1 draw step from here? No. I guess we can tread water twice. So if we play this and draw a painter, and then next turn draw a grindstone, I guess. But then they're probably an Emrakul deck, but that would give us a lot of information about their deck. I think it's worth playing out the staff here. Yeah, that's us dead. So we can go to game 3 knowing what our opponent is doing now. I did get some of the read on our opponent. They conceal the fact they're a red deck quite effectively though. So we want this Pithing Needle back in. March by the Worldly Light comes out. The round of the third path blows up Sneak Attack. We can blow up Sneak Attack with March by the Worldly Light, but that's not necessarily very easy. If they're on the Vesuvian Drifter plan, I'm tempted by these Swords to Plowshares. How are we going to fit these Swords to Plowshares into our deck? Is this a game where we're going to be playing a particularly long game? Probably not, which means Staff of Storyteller is less useful here. So I think we're probably going to have something like this, and that'll probably do. So we have an answer for Vesuvian Drifter. We have a Canonist, which can stop some of their things. We importantly have the Karakas, and we have sources to play around Blood Moon. We don't really have a good 1-drop, is the only issue here. We needed some sort of like Canonist type effect. But we boarded out some Mother of Runes. Now they do have Pyroclasm. Mother only saves 1 thing. I think that's fine. Let's see what they go for here. Is they going to have some sort of Ponder? Seems likely. We don't have the Solgai Lantern in our deck either, so Painter combo might be difficult. And our opponent don't show us an Emrakul, but we have to assume there's one in there. I was supposed to bring that Solgai Lantern back in, which is a bit of an error from our part there. Hopefully that won't come back to bite us. Let's try this one, which will slow our opponent down nicely. So they can't play like basic land, Lotus Petal and Show and Tell this turn. I don't know they can actually, right? Because so they get 1 Ponder here. The Lotus Petal won't get triggered by the Canonist because it's different to the Deafening Silence. They both restrict different types, which is why one is good against elves and one is terrible against elves. And one is good against 8-cast and one is not. Alright, so they chose not to shuffle with their Ponder. Not a big fan of that for us, but sometimes you've got to play the game, right? We'll play out our Karakas. We'll go to attacks. We're on mediocre man beatdown, I think, here. We'll try our Oswald Fiddlebender here. We've got a lot of these to get through, so if they Pyroclasm this, we can at least reload with a Canonist. We can bounce our own Fiddlebender if we really want to, but I'm not sure that's necessarily a thing that we want to do. If our opponent puts in a Vesuvian Drifter, we have a plow for it, which is nice. If our opponent Show and Tells in something scarier, then... Alright, here goes something. I guess we put this in. An Archon of Cruelty. What are we getting rid of here? I think it's the Fiddlebender. Or is it the Canonist, because they might have a meltdown type thing. Or a Canonist and a Fiddlebender from hand. So they can't cast a counter spell right now, so we will just plow this. Because they've already cast 1 spell this turn. We don't have a Crucible in our deck right now, so we'll go to attacks. We've got a lot of life total to work through. I don't think we can play around the Pyroclasm in this situation because we are just on beatdown mode right now. So let's see how we do. There's a Lotus Petal. That doesn't get hit by the Canonist because it's an artifact. A Vesuvian Drifter. Oakley dokley. Is it going to turn into something right now like a Grizzlebrand? It is not. It does blunt our aggro plan quite a bit though. So we can play out our Esper Sentinel. We can turn this Esper Sentinel into something else. What is still in our deck? So we boarded out the staffs. So the only thing it can find is a Painter's Servant. Is that useful to us? I don't think it is. I think it's better to have a Sentinel in play. I think we have to pass here. We could force through a little bit of damage, but it will come at the cost of 1 of our cards. Alright. Feels like this is our opponent's game to win right now. We are struggling a little bit. We can't even go into the combo. We don't have a way of finding the Grindstone now. And again, our opponent might have an Emrakul in their deck, which would be bad news. Alright, this looks like a sneak attack turn. A Blood Moon. Sure, that's a little bit annoying, but it shuts off our Karakas is the main thing. We've got the 2 planes, but is this going to turn into a legendary guy? No. Are they going to bash? Probably not, because this holds our board at bay very easily. Kaldra Compleat. Is that a thing that we have any interest in doing stuff with? I don't think so. We don't have a Crucible because we boarded that one out because it's a bit of a slow card here. So we could bash with the team, force through a tiny bit of damage, but that's not going to get us anywhere. I think we just have to pass. We're having a bad time over here. The Blood Moon also kind of fixes our opponent's mana as well. This also gets around Containment Priest as a card, the old Drifter, which is a very powerful tool. Okay, I imagine they're paying because they're not casting any more spells yet. So let's see where they put these. If they put one on top, then I think we're probably dead. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we'll be left with 1 permanent. 1 top, 1 bottom. There's an Emrakul. I think we lose. It's Grizzlebrown. We probably lose 2. Nothing. Alright. Pithing Needle. Sure, I'll cast Pithing Needle. It's another permanent, which is always handy. Do we pick on Grizzlebrown or we pick on Sneak Attack here? Both are kind of scary in their own right. If they have a Sneak Attack, probably in trouble whatever they have. I think Sneak Attack is the name here. Still can't attack. If we could put this Kaldra into play, it would be okay, but yeah. So we could have forced through 5, maybe 6 damage through our opponent by now, but then we wouldn't have any permanents left. And at least having permanents means we can try and play around an Emrakul. A Meltdown for 2. And they do not appear to be paying, so we will get a card out of this. Sure. Not a fantastic situation. They might start attacking with the Drifter here. Yeah, there it is. I've turned the corner. Containment Priest. Okay, I like this Containment Priest. We could get 2 damage in, or we could get an Esper Sentinel. Which is better for us. I think we need to draw some cards here. We're not winning this game as is. We'll sacrifice this Ancient Den. We'll go and get ourselves... Like, we could get a Grindstone and threaten that as a way of winning the game. We haven't actually seen the Emrakul yet. It's possible they didn't have it. But we didn't board in our... I think we're just going to get this Esper Sentinel and try and get our opponent with Containment Priest for if they cast a Show and Tell or something. We can turn this into a Canonist, which means that they won't be able to counterspell stuff if we're doing it in response. Alright, another island. A Show and Tell. I will cast this Containment Priest. They have a Force of Will for that. Alright. They're going to let us draw a card with a Sentinel? No, they are not. So we're going to put in our Kaldra Compleat and see if this does anything for us. A Grizzlebrand. Okay. 7 drop for an 8 drop. It's not the worst trade ever, but our opponent can draw a whole bunch of cards now. We're going to attack with a Drifter. They're not attacking with a Drifter. Interesting. So we've got to go clean up now. So the next turn is probably going to be quite a good one, I would imagine. Wasteland, that doesn't really do anything for us. We can turn this into a Canonist. That doesn't help. It doesn't help too much, at least. So I think we're attacking with the Germ. It beats things in combat, so it makes sense. Our opponent should be able to set up an Emrakul win next turn as well, with the Drifter and a Brainstorm, because they can see a bunch of cards. Alright, so we're going to get 1 through to our opponent here. So they won't be able to do the Emrakul win here, but they might be able to do... So we're definitely putting in the Canonist right now, I think. Because the Canonist will mean that it's going to be harder for them to get all their sort of ducks in a row next turn. Not feeling like we're winning this one. Okay, so they can still do the setup. I think we are still getting the Canonist here. Shame we don't have some ridiculous 8 drop, but... Oh, we don't have any Canonists left. Okay, we'll get a Painted Servant, I suppose. Or name White. I thought we had one more Canonist. 1, 2... Oh no, we have gone through all 3, haven't we? 3 Canonists, 3 Oswald. Not quite the draw we wanted. If our opponent doesn't have Emrakul, we might be able to randomly win the game next turn. But we haven't had the tools to set up the combo even with the Soulguide Lantern this game. Meltdown for 2. Okay, this will kill our Painter Servant. And here is the Brainstorm. Are they going to put an Arc of Cruelty or an Emrakul on top? Kills us. It's going to be big Emrakul. It is the big Emrakul. Sure, so they attack us here. We lose everything and we die. GG's, opponent. Yeah, that was a pretty awkward one. We could have sideboarded a little bit better for game 2. It wasn't the cleanest of sideboards. We didn't know what our opponent was. Like, we had an inkling, but we kind of had to play around a bunch of stuff because 3 islands is quite a lot to see. But there we are. So these matchups tend to be kind of awkward for painted decks because you can't combo them out because of Emrakul. But usually White Painter, because of the aggro plan, is a lot better in these matchups. I think we should have sideboarded slightly differently, maybe trimmed down on our Painter stuff, but put the Saga Lantern in. Now, that's not really going to matter when we're just drawing 3 Ethersworn Canonist, 3 Oswald Fiddlebender for our game. That felt pretty awkward. If we'd have found another Swords earlier, we could have taken out the Vesuvian Drifter and probably just beat our opponent down and probably had the game that way. So, a little bit tough breaks, but this is sometimes a problem you get when you play a white deck. Your opponents get to draw a lot more cards, and we bored out our sort of long, grindy game type stuff to make sure we didn't die, like our stuff as Storyteller. I think realistically, I could have sideboarded a bit differently and boarded down on the Painter combo and kept the staffs in, so at least we had a little bit of way of drawing into the things that would interact with our opponent a bit more. Alright, a bit unfortunate, we are 1 and 2, but we're going to keep going at least until we've done 5 rounds worth of content for you all, but we might just play the whole thing depending on how I feel. Alright, let's keep going. See you in the next round. We're into round 4, we're on the play, our opening hand isn't keepable, we don't have enough mana. Let's go again. Yeah, this one's keepable. We've got a Staff of Storyteller thing. We're a little bit exposed to Wasteland, which is annoying. We can keep this, throw back the Kaldra for later. And we can start things off however we deem fit. I think I will lead out on Wasteland Saga Lantern here. It doesn't expose anything dangerous to opposing Wastelands. Gives us protection versus a Reanimator player. Flooded Strand. Probably not a Reanimator player unless they're blue-black Reanimator. Right, a basic island. Into Ponder. Sure. So next turn we play the Ancient Den and the Staff, I think. So we could have played the Ancient Den out on turn 1 and made it so we could play as a Saga on 2. But exposing ourselves to Wasteland like that didn't feel like a great plan to me. Alright, let's do a Staff. This is going to be a slow, grindier matchup. Then we've got some nice tools for this. Alright, we're in with Staff the Storyteller. Pretty good. We need to keep an eye on the amount of cards in our opponent's graveyard in terms of things like Murktide, which could be in our opponent's deck. Let's see what land they get here. An Underground Sea. Dark Ritual. So we're looking at Doomsday, I suspect. Yeah. And they're going to play around this Wasteland that we already have. So they probably win the game next turn. Doomsday is arguably the worst matchup in my experience for this deck. It's really hard to beat Doomsday, because none of our cards really interact with them very nicely. Like, we can do stuff that makes it so they cast only 1 spell a turn, but... Oh wow, they're killing us right now. With the Ponder, most likely. Alright, opponent. No? Okay. Going for a next turn kill. Stoneforge Mystic. This isn't going to do anything here. I think our route to winning this game is grindstoning our opponent. So I think we'll play out the Saga. And then... we grindstone first, and then we wasteland our opponent to try and make it more difficult for them to win next turn. Because they might have gone for a multiple turn line. It seems incredibly unlikely, but we have to play to the only ways that our deck can actually win. If we have 1 more mana, we can activate this now, and just grinding them for 2 might be enough to stop them winning the game. Like, people, like, the grindstone as a general rule is useful against Doomsday because you can mess with their pile. The problem is, we don't have soul lands and stuff to power out our grindstones. Okay, so how do we go about doing this? We can play a Stoneforge Mystic, bash them to 6, bash them to 7. Next turn we attack them for 5, 6. That's still not going to be enough. I think we are on drawing a card mode. Mother of Runes, that's not going to do it. Let's wasteland them and see if this is good enough. Like, the wasteland was heads up, so they built their pile around the wasteland. But they might have just had a slow pile so that they can just kill us at their leisure because we haven't represented a lot of threat. So it's going to be tough for us to... Alright, yeah, so cycling now. They can cast, and they're cycling again, and they're cycling again. Yep, and then they kill us with the Thassa's Oracle. Pretty easy win for our opponent there, I'm afraid. Not having a great time of it today, are we? So, what is going to be useful here? Do we think they're on a shouldered plan? They were just straight blue-black. We saw. Should have checked the exile pile a bit more carefully, really. So I think we want these Deafening Silences to slow them down. I don't think we need Portable Hole. I don't think the Crucible is going to be the most useful. Although Crucible Wasteland Lock is relatively good here. It's certainly an option. Comboing them is going to be nice. Pithing Needle, we can name some of their little bits and pieces. I think Retrofitters and stuff as Storyteller is going to be too slow here to matter. Now this is a lot of slots, so we can bring in some more things. Do we want to bring in some plows for the shouldered plan? I think I'd quite like that. Just the 3 is probably enough here. And we'll keep the Crucible in for the purposes of if we can get a Deafening Silence or a Canonist down, we can make it so they can never cast Doomsday by just rebuying our Wastelands every turn. So our opening hand doesn't have any white mana, so we probably need to mulligan this one. This does have white mana and it has a 1-drop. We can probably bin off the Painter's Servant here. It's either a Painter's Servant or a Plains, but I think we just need to make sure we have enough mana so that if we do get to combo, we can actually have the mana to put into it. This matchup is pretty bleak, and we're probably going to get bodied again. This might slow them down or buy us some turns, or buy some cards, which might give us some disruption. But if they think they're winning in the very near future, they'll just ignore this Sentinel anyway. They might use this to cast a Lotus Petal around the Sentinel trigger though. Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. Sure. Let's slow them down a bit. Another Lotus Petal, sure. And a Personal Tutor. Not great for us, that one. They're going to have a Doomsday next turn. How are we supposed to interrupt this? Alright, I think we will play Painter's Servant, and we'll put it on black so we can't be snuffed out. Go to tax. And we've got to hope that this Wasteland is something we can leverage, or possibly that our opponent goes for a combo without an empty deck. Which usually is something that they don't have to do. And they certainly won't do that into open white mana. Alright, there's a land we can Wasteland. If they make their pile not respecting the Wasteland, then we might be able to get a bit more joy out of this Wasteland and buy ourselves an additional turn. Whether or not an additional turn is going to be enough for us to actually win this game, I don't know. But yeah, it's been a bit of a gauntlet of matchups I don't really want to face today. So here we are. Are they going to pay for this? No. Okay, so we can Stoneforge and Wasteland next turn, and here's the Doomsday. Leyline of Sanctity, they've boarded in there. But no shouldered plan. There's no cantrippers that I can see in here, right? No Edge of Autumn or things. So they're just going for it next turn. Alright. Not ideal for us. They already have the 2 mana for the purposes of casting their guy. So that's not going to go well for us either. There's a Saga. Do you do anything? I don't think you do. So I think we're attacking for 2. It's not a lot. So we can Wasteland our opponent, and maybe that buys us another turn. Unlikely, because I'm pretty sure they just have a bunch of cyclers in there. If they have a bunch of cyclers, can we... Is there a realistic chance of us being able to plow the guy in response? I think that's our only way of winning this game. We could play the Stoneforge and have lethal damage next turn, but I don't think that's actually a line that can win us. I think we need our opponent to make a mistake. They need to play the Oracle. Alright, so they're not playing it into the plow. Okay. Interesting. So we can attack with these 2, and then we're kind of in a similar position to last time, except this time we can play the Saga. So we're shutting off their cyclers here. And we'll jam this Stoneforge. Do you have a counterspell for this? No, I don't think they would care about this. They're just going to try and win on the next turn. If we'd have played this last turn, we might have been able to actually steal the game. Alright. There's no Consider in here, so I think they might have had a Consider pile to mill the top card. Street Wraith. That's the last Street Wraith they get to use. However, if we plow their... No, they won't have enough life, actually. Alright, so this is going to come into play. This trigger on the stack, we will plow this. This is the line we've been setting up for. We've got 3 cards in hand. Alright. So they cycle 1, and now they cycle the other, and they win the game exactly through our plow. Yep. Bit awkward. So because they had the Street Wraiths here, and only one Edge of Autumn. If we'd have just tapped out for the Stoneforge, they would have killed us on that turn anyway. So the play we did, we didn't throw the game by not playing the Stoneforge a turn earlier. They had the win rolled up, I think. I guess they got cards in hand. They might have been able to... They might have had a second Edge of Autumn they were hoping to cycle. But we took that cycle away from them. I don't know. I think a good Doomsday player in that situation, when the Wasteland is, you know, expected because we've been playing them in the previous game, their Doomsday pile should be able to get around this. As I said at the top, this matchup is awful. I think it's probably the matchup I've lost to most playing this deck. So we got bodied again. We're 1-3. We're having a horrible time of it. But there's still some more content to record, and maybe we can turn it around. Maybe we'll play against some of these more mid-rangey, fairer decks where we can kind of leverage the things that our deck does a bit more. All right, I'll catch you in the next round. All right, we're into round 5, I think it is now. Our opening hand looks pretty good. We got multiple 1-drops into multiple 2-drops, and there's a Saga plan. Probably the best hand we've had so far in the tournament. Am I more into Mother of Runes or Esper Sentinel? I think we're going to try the Mother of Runes first and then get our Stoneforge on board protected so we can just dump the Cauldron into play and race a lot of the things our opponent does. Alternatively, we can use these 2 cards to work towards the Painted Servant and get the Grindstone off the Saga. So we've got a lot of options to play this game. Cavern of Souls. What creature type are they going to be naming here? Human. Is this the Humans deck? Or is this going to be Initiative? Initiative significantly better than the Humans deck. What are they imprinting to their Chrome Mox? Touch of the Spirit Realm. Okay, so we're very much in the old Initiative town. Chalice for 1. Right? It's fine by me. We'll deploy this as a Saga. We'll play a Stoneforge Mystic this turn. Go and get ourselves a threat that's going to be better than their threats for the most part. In the Kaldra Compleat. And we'll hold up the Mother of Runes to protect our Stoneforge from things like Solitude or well, not Source of Plowshares because of the Chalice, but they could have Touch the Spirit Realm as well. Our opponent is either white or the red-white version, I think. I've not seen much variation beyond those 2. Alright, they're just giving up to Stoneforge. Alright, I'll take it. That's a win. Let's think about the next game. So, we're going to need to blow up these Chalice of the Voids, which means we're going to want these sorts of tools here. And we're going to want to be able to kill their creatures, which means we're going to want some sort of Source to Plowshares in our deck. So there's potentially 8 cards that are worthwhile here. We do not need a Soulguide Lantern here. Pithing Needle is less useful. Portable Hole is something we can tutor for with the Oswald to blow up the thing, but we probably want to trim an Oswald because Karakas is something we're going to be expecting to find. They haven't seen our combo, so I'm quite happy with the idea of keeping some combo pieces in. We'll take out 1 Grindstone to make room for some higher impact cards. Retrofitter Foundry is an interesting one, but it's quite slow in this sort of matchup, so I think we can do away with that one. Canonist, not very exciting here either. And that's a full 8. Then we do on the Mother of Runes. The Esper Sentinel is okay here. I like the Crucible as a way of Wasteland your opponent out of the game because their deck relies on playing 4-drops, and it's not like the good old days or the bad old days where you could play White Plume Adventurer. They need to be casting 4-drops to really impact the board, so we're going to keep it going like this and see how we fare. Okay. We don't have a second land, but we're on the draw, and we've got a reasonable hand here that can definitely pressure our opponent. If they go turn 1 Chalice, that's obviously not great for us, but we can March for the Worldly Lighter if we need to. There's a Lotus Petal. Are they going to play a 4-drop on turn 1? They're not going to play anything interesting. We could just take out this Lotus Petal for turn 1. I think we probably need to save that for Chalice to be realistic here. I think the Mother of Runes is going to be better because this is a deck where they're trying to deploy creatures and kill you with creatures. So Mother of Runes is pretty good in the old combat stake, especially when you need to push something through to gain the initiative. Very much like to draw a land. We've had one of our draws. We got 1 more draw to find a land in. Otherwise, we're going to miss our second land drop, which could be a problem. Much rather already liked. If we just pay 1 mana and discard a card for the X on it, then it's not actually going to cost us anything. It's not going to get hit by the Chalice, even though we're only paying 1 mana for it because the X has been paid for by cards, but it's still part of the thing. Alright, Caves of Chaos Adventurer. Now, we can March by the Wildly Light this creature and then attack with our Mother of Runes. That's a thing we are allowed to do. We still have 1 floating here. I'm not going to do anything with it. Alright, I think we have to hit this. So we're going to exile 2 white cards. I think we're probably looking at Fiddlebender and Stoneforge here. That's going to pay the 4 on it. This will exile that Caves of Chaos Adventurer. Attack, hopefully gain the initiative and get this land that we need. Alright, let's get one of our many planes. Excellent. I'll play this planes and follow up with a 1-drop. So we have 2 ways of getting the initiative back of our opponent. If our opponent doesn't play an initiative creature this turn, then we get to go into Forge and put the counters on Esper Sentinel, which really taxes them a lot for casting spells. So we should just be drawing a whole bunch of cards in that. I feel we're probably going to get Seasoned Dungeoneered here, though. Loran of the Third Path. Okay. That's a little bit annoying. Takes out a Sentinel, but it's not the end of the world. I'd rather they spend this on the Sentinel than something good like a Staff of the Storyteller. Right. We've got another 3-drop. A Plough on our Mother. Sure. So we're definitely going down the right-hand side here. Lost Well. We're looking for lands, basically. We found 2 lands. I don't really want this Ancient Den, though. So we're going to put the Ancient Den on the bottom and the plains on the top. And then we'll draw this plains. And we're going to jam this Staff of the Storyteller, because this is the thing that can favourably block Loran the easiest. And then we can draw a card off Staff of the Storyteller when we see fit. Got 3 mana here. Is this Touch the Spirit Realm on our Spirit token? It is. Okay. So we're going to take 2 and they're going to get the initiative back. They're going down the Lost Well, or are they forging up their Loran? They're going down the Lost Well to find some more stuff to do. Alright, so we have a Stoneforge which can find us a Batterskull or a Kaldra. We'll draw a card from our Staff of the Storyteller. A Plough. Okay. It's a pretty good one. Jam a Stoneforge. Then we get Kaldra. And then we'll pass. We can Plough the Loran if we feel the need to. Imagine the Loran probably attacks here. Yeah, okay. So we can Plough this Loran now. And then see what they have to follow up. Anointed Peacekeeper. This is going to name Stoneforge Mystic. This is a good reason why we maybe should have kept our Plough. Although they would just name Plough. Sure. Does this cost 2 more or 3 more? 2 more. So if we draw a land, we can still just deploy the Kaldra. We drew a land, sure. I'll pay 4 mana for my Kaldra. That seems fine to me. This puts a counter on our Staff of the Storyteller for next turn. Charging up our lasers. Let's bash. This puts us into the stash, which is pretty useful. Gives us the ability to draw a card instant speed if we need to. We've already played land of 10, so there's no reason for us to draw this now. They can attack us with the Anointed Peacekeeper and get the initiative back and get Spooky Skeleton. There's no point using this treasure token to draw this from the staff unless they're going to blow up one or the other of these. But we are ahead in the damage race. They are approaching Throne the Dead 3, but we can block from next turn onwards. So getting the initiative back this turn is going to be really good for us. So we can play a creature. So we have 2 creatures to block this if we want to. And we'll have the Spooky Skeleton. Alright, this takes them to Throne of the Dead 3. Pretty big game. Let's see what they find. Magus of the Moon, Anointed Peacekeeper, Palace Jailer. Yeah, they're going to Palace Jail away our Phyrexian Germ token. That's pretty good. Even if we get it back, it doesn't really do anything. It does put another counter on our Staff of the Storyteller if we get it back. Wait, no, that won't work. What am I talking about? The token's gone for good. Alright. Painted Servant. I think I'm going to start with a card draw here. Okay. That's certainly a thing we get to do here. But how much damage are we facing? 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So we do need to deploy some creatures. So I think we are deploying the Stoneforge here. Oh wait, no, because Stoneforge costs more because of the Anointed Peacekeeper, isn't it? Oh, this is a bit of a doozy, isn't it? So if this can block the 5/5, we take 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if we draw a land, we can go. I think we're supposed to just play the Painter here. I think we're in black here. Not that it really matters. And we'll deploy this. Yeah, I think ploughing that Loran a few turns ago is going to come back to bite us. Or it already is coming back to bite us. Well, there would have been 3 mana to kill this, so that would have taken basically our whole turn. I don't think there was a really good way of navigating that situation. But we saved ourselves 2 points of damage, which might actually be relevant now. So, do they have removal spells here? They do get to cast whatever they get off of the Caves of Chaos Adventurer for free, which is a little bit spooky. An ancient tomb. Okay. Please allow me to block with my Stoneforge Mystic. This blocks here. We take 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. If they have an initiative creature, then that will probably kill us. Because it'll put them into... Oh no, wait. It won't put them into the trap yet. Swords to Plowshares on our guy. Okay. We can still draw a Painted Servant to win the game here. We did not draw a Painted Servant to win the game here. I think we will scoop this one up. Alright. Game 3. What are we doing differently, if anything? Do we want more Grindstones to try and combo them out better? Since we get to play the Grindstone on 1 in this situation, which is not something we got to do before. Go for that slight difference. It opens up more possibilities for just going turn 1, 2, 3. I'll keep this. We're not going to put out the Grindstone, we're going to put out the Mother of Runes here. It's more important to get a creature on the board and protect our Mother of Runes with it. So we'll do this into the Mother. And let's hope they don't just make a 4-drop on turn 1, because that's very hard to beat for us. Well, we could hit a Plow, I suppose. And then we could Plow plus Saga or Grindstone. Right, let's hope they waste a turn doing some sort of Chalice. Apparently not. Right, we've got Summon the Spirit Guide underneath there. Alright, so we're getting a 4-drop on turn 1, which is a bit of a disaster for us, but that's very much been the theme of this event so far. Right, so it's over to us. If we get a Plow, we can Plow this and attack and take the initiative, and that's okay. They have put a lot of resources into making this guy. Karakas, that's not really the one, is it? So I think we're on Plains Stoneforge here. And I think we get the Kaldra. And next turn we're looking to do something like Urza Saga plus activate Stoneforge Mystic. Right, so they're just making a really big guy to try and get us dead. That's fair enough. So they should attack with this first so they get the trigger in case it's a land or whatever they want to play. A Lotus Petal. Yep, so they're going to play that in their second main. We're going to take 7 here. There's a Lotus Petal that we knew about. They got a follow-up threat here. I suspect so. They got a lot of mana available to them. Is it the Dungeoneer? Archon of Emeria. Okay. It's not the scariest one. An Ancient Den. Does this change anything for us? Not particularly. This comes in tapped. And then we can put in our guy for blocks, which I think is sadly what we have to do here, right? And that can gobble up the Chaos Adventurer. So we're going to let them trap us down to 8. And then peck us for 2 in the sky with the Archon. And then hopefully stabilise next turn. They can't attack with the Chaos Adventurer if we've got the Kaldra face up. Yep, we take 5 there. Getting some attacks in. I imagine it's just the Archon that comes in here. Yeah, sure. So we take our damage. So we saved ourselves 7 life in that exchange. Which isn't too shabby. A Loran of the Third Path. So we're going to lose our Urza Saga here. Bit awkward. But any land that we were playing was coming tapped in anyway. In the end step, we'll put in our Kaldra. Right. Swords to Plowshares would be very handy about now. Alright, so we've just drawn lands. I think for this entire game we've just drawn the lands. So we hold us back, we take 2, and then they go to the Archives next turn. That's pretty bad for us. We can give this pro red an attack and force a trade with the Loran. That gets us the initiative. How useful is the initiative to us is the real question. It stops them from carrying on with the stuff they're doing, but they can just take it, let us get the initiative, and that gives them more creatures to attack the next turn. So I think we have to deploy a Grindstone here, and then we'll play a Karakas. And then unfortunately I think we have to pass. Not a great situation for us, which has very much been the situation we've found ourselves in a lot of times. We have drawn a lot of lands this game. We've only drawn lands. Bit awkward. So this turn they'll just peck us for 2 more. Yep, here comes the Archon, giving us a little pasting. Yep, there's the 2. Next turn they're going to throw in the dead 3, which is almost certainly lights out. They're bouncing their Loran of the Third Path. Sure. This means they can redeploy it and blow up our Grindstone, so we can't win via the Painter combo. Unless they make a mistake and hit our Kaldra, which is indestructible, but I don't think our opponent's going to do. Alright, goodbye to the Grindstone. We had to play it out because we can't multi-spell due to the Archon. Not really sure what we're looking for here, but it's certainly not another land. Throne of Dead 3 is going to kill us. I think we should just pack it in here. I think we're done. We only drew lands in that final game, and our opponent made a turn 1 Chaos Adventurer, so pretty unfortunate. We've been getting a bit unfortunate with some of our matchups. This is one of the matchups that we actually are pretty happy to play against, but you can have a good matchup and still get kind of rocked by some variants here, like the turn 1 Chaos Adventure is a real issue for us, as it would be for anything. But if we'd have found a plow like super early on, then this could have turned around, but we literally only drew lands this entire game. So yeah, I think that's it. We are getting absolutely destroyed here, so I think we're probably going to drop from the event entirely. So let's have a little chat about the deck and how the tournament went. Alright, so our record was pretty miserable. We got bodied by a whole bunch of stuff today. Now, the matchups we played against are some of the more difficult matchups for this deck. So Doomsday, I think, is actually the worst matchup for this deck because you can't really imprison them behind Deafening Silence or Canonist, and they are just quicker than what we're doing. And I think in this deck, it's very hard to get a Grindstone to actually be useful early enough because you need to play it for 1 and then you need to activate it for 3. And if you play it for 1, then they can construct their pile in a way that doesn't lose to the Grindstone activation. So they can sort of bookend it with Thassa's Oracles and things like that. So that matchup's just horrible. The Sneak and Show matchup is pretty bad as well in a lot of ways. It's better with this build than it is with other painted builds because our A plan of attacking is a lot stronger due to Stoneforge Mystic, but we can't ever combo them because of the Emrakul. It becomes a 3-card combo, which just isn't realistic against them. And the new Vesuvian Drifter tech is surprisingly good against us because it holds all of our little creatures at bay, as you saw in one of the games, so we can't even get little bits of damage in versus the Vesuvian Drifter, and it also just gives them a thing that they can do that gets around Containment Priest. So it's just been a very potent upgrade for their deck in a matchup that's already, you know, a little bit iffy, I would say. And we had the 8-cast matchup where we lost a die roll, and both the games we lost in that matchup, we would have won on the following turn, or we had the way of stopping our opponent if we'd have gone first type thing. So a bit unlucky with that one. We had a bye, so can't really comment about that one. And this last game with Initiative, we just drew nothing but lands. So it was a pretty horrible variance for us in terms of the matchups we faced, as well as the luck we got, especially in that final round. I don't mind getting bad luck against bad matchups, because it feels like it's a bit of a wash when you get bad luck against a matchup that your deck's kind of supposed to be pretty good against. You've got Staff of Storyteller, gives us a 1-1 that can take the initiative quite easily. We've got Mother of Runes to help combat maths and stuff. We've got a combo that if we need it, Stoneforge Mystic produces a creature that outclasses most of theirs. We have Wasteland, so we can keep them off mana so they can't keep deploying threats. We have a pretty solid deck in that matchup now that White Plume Adventure is gone. But the problem is, we just drew lands. We just drew lands for every single turn. And our opponent did make a turn 1 4-mana play. So, pretty awkward, I would say. I think the fact that we played against some difficult matchups is actually a bit conducive to how the format is right now. Because there are a bunch of people playing fair decks. There's like the Fiend Artisan Elves deck, for example. And there's a few people playing stuff like Shark Tail. And there are still Delver decks out there. So, you know, there's a whole spread of decks that we can play against that we're quite good against. But then, conversely, there's a few decks that we're pretty bad against. And we got a bit jammed up by playing against them. I think, at the moment in Legacy, it feels very dangerous to be playing a deck that doesn't have access to either Hand Disruption, Force of Wills, or a very quick clock. Or things like Chalice are also fine as well, like Prison Pieces. But you need to have big ways of shutting stuff down. And our deck, just by the nature of what it is, doesn't really have giant ways of shutting stuff down. We're sort of like a mid-range deck that is pretty good at grinding. It's got a lot of avenues. It can take advantage of various board states. But what we can't do is disrupt decks that are doing something more broken in a quicker time frame. And that's kind of how we got jammed up today. Does it mean this is a deck that I should put down for a bit? Probably. I think the format's about to change a bit because there's definitely some Lord of the Rings cards that are going to make it into Legacy, and I'm curious to see how that impacts the format. But I don't think this is where I would really want to be in the Legacy format right now. I think one of the best decks at the moment is probably Death Shadow, for the reasons being it's very, very good at the disruptive things I said that you really need in the format right now. So you've got all these excellent disruption engines that you can deploy, as well as some good threats to end the game with. So I think Death Shadow is my pick for one of the best decks right now. Yeah, I think that's it for today. Sorry it was a bit of a downer and a sad one today, but not every league or event can go well. And there's definitely some interesting learning here. It wasn't necessarily the most exciting of content either, to be honest with you, but here we are. So thank you very much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and why not check out the Patreon link below. Maybe sign up to one of my tiers. There's one that's just like to give me a couple of quid to say thanks for making videos all the time. I appreciate anything you can do. I'm trying to afford my trip to European Legacy Masters in September, so why not? All right, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.